Yeah, so good morning once again. Today we're coming to look at overview of strategic management. And as I just indicated, it will be addressing the major concepts as far as strategic management is concerned. So the learning objectives, we'll be looking at the meaning of strategic management, the stages of strategic management, components of strategic management, the concept of strategic change, continuous improvement, competitive strategy, definition of strategy, attributes of strategic decisions, theoretical underpinnings of strategic management. Then finally, we'll look at the benefits of strategic management. All right. So we're starting with the meaning of strategic management. So strategic management is the art and science of formulating, implementing, and evaluating cross-functional decisions that enable an organization to achieve its objectives. All right. So some words have been bolded, and we have to take note of that. So strategic management is an art as well as a science. Okay. It's an art because it calls for personal creativity, personal flair, and ingenuity in order to make it a success. Normally, if you're talking about the arts, things like dancing, things like painting, and so on and so forth, you may be taught the theory and the principles, but if you don't have that natural flair, it becomes very, very difficult to be able to do those kinds of works. All right. Or even football or driving. You can go to a classroom, you'll be taught, but when it comes to the actual execution, it calls for some personal attributes such as being creative, being able to think on your feet in order to be able to do those tasks. So that is how strategic management is. It involves an art, or it has an aspect of an art. Then it also involves science. When we talk about science, we're talking about body of knowledge, body of principles, some procedures, guidelines for doing some particular activity. That is the explanation for the concept of science. So whenever we refer to something as a science, what it means is that it normally has some body of knowledge that can be studied, and once you follow the principles that have been laid out in those body of knowledge, you should be able to get a certain results. All right. So in strategy, we'll come to see certain stages, certain principles, certain concepts, such that if, as a manager, if you were to respect and go by those principles and strategies or body of knowledge, you should be able to help your organization to achieve certain objectives or targets that you've set for yourself. Okay. So, but in spite of the fact that there's this body of knowledge, the art aspect is still very, very critical on the part of the strategist in order to be successful in strategic management. So you may have the knowledge, all right, as I've indicated earlier, in the case of my example of, say, driving or, say, playing football, you may know the theory, but your personal flair and your personal creativity is very, very important for the strategic management process to be successful. So it's both an art as well as a science. All right. So science of formulating, implementing, and evaluating. So very soon we realize that these three things are the stages of strategic management. You have to first formulate strategies, you must implement them, and after the implementation, you must evaluate these strategies to find out whether they helped you to be able to achieve your objectives or not. Okay. The other key term that we must pay attention to is the fact that strategic management involves cross-functional decisions. All right. So in organizations, we have what is known as functional areas. So you have departments like the marketing, you have accounting and finance, you may have human resource, you may have legal, and so on and so forth. Okay, but if you're into strategic management, you are not just interested in, say, what marketing is doing or what production is doing or what human resources is doing. You need all these functional areas to come on board in order to be able to succeed in strategic management. So the decisions that are taken during strategic planning or management process calls for input from all the functional areas of the business. All right, accounting and finance will have a role to play. Human resource management should have a role to play. What again? Supply chain, all the functional areas should have some role to play when you're dealing with strategic management decisions. All right, so it entails cross-functional decisions and not functional decisions. If it's a functional decision, what it means is that the problem is just a marketing problem or marketing department problem, then they must solve that particular problem. If it's a problem with finance, what it means is that it's just a problem that the finance department must solve. Okay, but whenever an issue calls for collaboration of the various departments in an organization, then that particular issue should have some element of strategic management. Okay, so it's an art and science of formulating, implementing, and evaluating cross-functional decisions that will enable an organization to achieve its objectives. So strategic management is also not done in a vacuum. You undertake the process because you have some objectives or targets that you want to achieve. All right. So what I just explained is what you'll find in bullet 2. The goal of strategic management is to integrate management, marketing, finance and accounting, production operations, research and development, and information systems to attain organizational success. So you don't leave them disjointed. All right. You need all these functional areas to be working together in order to be successful as an organization. All right. And strategic management helps to bring all of them on board in order to achieve the objectives of an organization. Okay. So it entails the management of an organization's long-term purpose. So later we'll be looking at the purpose of an organization and the fact that strategic management always connotes the idea of long-term. When you use the word operational management is for the day-to-day activities of an organization. Okay, but whenever the word strategic is used, it connotes the idea of long-term. So in strategic management, you're putting in place some tactics, some measures in order to help you achieve some long-term goal or target for the organization. Okay. It also entails managing an organization holistically so that you can manage the operations to the extent that fulfills the strategic needs of the organization's plan. So you don't just want to be doing things anyhow. You have a roadmap, you have a strategic plan, and so your day-to-day activities, even though they may look as though it's the normal operational thing, but those operational things should culminate into helping to achieve the strategic needs that has been stated in the organizational plan. So that is that for the definition of strategic management or the explanation of strategic management. All right. So as I was explaining the definition, I said the three stuff in there are known as the stages of strategic management. So in strategic management, we have three major stages. We have what is known as strategy formulation. Okay, the stage where you have to decide the type of strategies that you want to pursue. Then we have strategy implementation, where you now want to execute those strategies that you've selected. Then after that, you do what is known as strategy evaluation to find out whether you were successful at what you wanted to achieve as a strategist. Okay, so there are some issues involved at each stage. At the strategy formulation stage, the firm must concern itself with developing a vision and a mission for the organization. I think lecture 2 will be about that, vision, mission, and value statements. Together, they are known as the purpose of an organization. Okay, so at the strategy formulation stage, the firm must be concerned with developing a vision and a mission statement for the organization. It must also be concerned with identifying an organization's external opportunities and threats. It must determine the internal strengths and weaknesses of the organization. It must establish the long-term objectives of the organization. It must also generate the alternative strategies and then choose which particular strategy to pursue at this particular stage. Okay, so at the formulation stage, all these things are in there. So maybe let me just give an idea of what they are. So the vision is it's just like personally saying that I have a vision. Okay, in the long term, where the organization sees itself is normally the vision. So you don't start formulating strategies without knowing where the organization is heading towards. It's very, very important that you have a mental picture of where the organization wants to be. So at the formulation stage, firms must actually pay attention to developing that mental picture of where they want to be in the future. Okay. Then after you've done that, you need what is known as the mission. What exactly will the organization be doing from day to day? So here you need to define the type of products and services that you'll be offering, the type of technology that you seek to use, the type of markets you'll be serving, what you'll be doing for your employees, your customers, and other stakeholders of the organization. All right. So this is normally very brief, but the mission of the organization is normally very comprehensive because there are about 9 components that you must address whenever you're developing a mission statement for an organization. And all of that should take place at the strategy formulation stage. So you need a vision and you need a mission. All right. The other thing is you need to do environmental scanning or studies. You need to understand your external environment. That is where you get to know the opportunities and the threats that are likely to be facing the organization. All right. So you don't go straight away generating strategies without knowing the opportunities. You have to know the opportunities and also the threats that the firm will face before you can realistically come up with the right strategies to help you to take advantage of these opportunities and also minimize these threats. Okay, so at the strategy formulation stage, you want to understand your environment. And I said bullet 2 is about the external environment of the business. Later, I'll be discussing that either in lecture 3 or 4. All right. Then you also have to know your internal strengths and weaknesses. Whilst the opportunities and threats will be coming from the external environment, your knowledge of your internal strengths and weaknesses, as the name suggests, will be coming from your understanding of your internal environment, okay? The factors within the organization. They are those factors that can either serve as source of strengths or they can serve as source of weaknesses. So at the strategy formulation stage, you have to know the strengths and the weaknesses of your organization. Once again, that is important because then it can help you when you are generating your strategies because you know your strengths and you know your weaknesses. So when you are generating strategies, you may likely be generating those strategies that can make use of the strength that you have and probably minimize the effect of the weaknesses of the organization. All right. At the strategy formulation stage also, you have to establish long-term objectives. All right. So the long-term objectives are different from your vision. Your vision most of the time is like motivational statement to get your stakeholders, employees motivated to work hard. But the long-term objectives need to be measurable, right? So they normally have quantitative issues attached to that. There's some percentage increase that you want to get. Maybe you want to increase your profit by 50%. You want to probably expand the number of branches from say 50 to 100, things like that. So long-term objectives are supposed to be measurable. They are supposed to be realistic. All the attributes that of objectives, certain objectives must come to play when you're setting long-term objectives. But definitely they should have a bearing on the vision, such that as you keep achieving this, then you'll be able to achieve the vision that you set out to achieve as an organization. Okay. So after you've done all of this, then you now come to generating alternative strategies, okay, to help you to be able to achieve these long-term objectives. So these alternative strategies, some may be strategies at the functional level, some may be strategies at the business level, some may be strategies at the corporate level. And as I indicated earlier, if you're into international business, some may be international strategies as to how to cope in the international environment where you are operating. All right. So you develop alternative strategies. Then you now go through some processes to also select or choose the strategies that you think will be most feasible for the firm to pursue. All right. So at this stage, it's a brainstorming stage where you want to get as many strategies as possible. But at this stage, you now want to be particular about the things that we've spoken about earlier, your opportunities, your threats, your strengths and weaknesses, in order to pick the strategies that will help you to leverage on your strengths and your opportunities whilst minimizing the threats and the weaknesses facing the organization. Okay. Any questions before we move to the next slide? Are we fine with strategy formulation, the issues in here?
Yes. Yes, bro.
Okay, right. So these are the constituents, the makeup of strategy formulation, okay? So some of the major decisions you'll be taking at this stage include deciding what new businesses to enter, okay? The case shouldn't be here, it's new. So you need to decide whether there are some new businesses you want to enter under the strategy formulation stage. You also must be making decisions as to which businesses you want to abandon. So strategy or strategic management doesn't always mean expansion or growth, okay? It could also be strategic to be lean, to grow lean. What I mean by that is to stop businesses, to close down, say, branches that are not profitable to the organization. So it's not just about creating and expanding and entering into new businesses, but in strategy formulation, you may also make a decision as to the type of businesses that you want to abandon because probably they may not be too profitable for the group. Okay. Then whether to expand operations or diversify. So those are the other decisions you'll be making. If the current product and services you have market and the market is growing, you may want to expand, okay? But based on your analysis, if the market is likely to shrink in the near future, you may want to diversify into other areas in order to minimize your losses or risks that may confront the firm. So you will be making those decisions at the strategy formulation stage, whether to expand your operations or to diversify. Close to that, you have to be making decisions whether to merge or form a joint venture. All right. So there may be opportunities that your firm may not be capable of taking advantage if it decides to operate alone. Maybe you don't have the expertise, you don't have the resources. So part of the decision may be to form a joint venture with another company to be able to take advantage of that particular opportunity. All right. Or form a merger. So this is temporary. With joint venture, you just form partnership with another company to execute a project. After the project has been successfully executed, the companies go their separate ways. Okay, but with a merger, it is where the two companies now come together to form a new company. And they are part of strategy formulation issues that you have to decide. Okay, if the competition is so high and you feel that you cannot survive the nature of the competition or rivalry, it may make sense to merge with a dominant partner in that particular industry. Okay. Then at this stage, you need to be mindful of how to avoid what is known as hostile takeover. Sometimes if you fail to merge and you are not very, very strong, you may have some hostile competitors trying to buy your company. Okay, if you have partners or other shareholders that are willing to sell, once they buy about, say, 50% plus one of the shares of your company, then they have what is known as the decision-making right or power, and they become almost like the owners of the business. So as part of your strategy formulation, one of the issues that you need to be mindful of is the issue of hostile takeover. All right. As the business is growing and expanding, make sure that you hold all major shareholders together and keep them informed about the vision and the mission and the direction of the organization so that they will not be tempted to sell their shares to, say, an investor who doesn't share the vision and the direction of your organization. So at the strategy formulation stage, you want to be mindful of the concept of hostile takeover, where an investor may just jump in because they have money to buy off your company. Sometimes if they are successful, they may even buy you off or take over. The way they will operate the business, you may not like it, so you may have to leave. Okay. The next stage of strategic management after the formulation is the implementation. And at the implementation stage, these are the steps that we want to be mindful of. So at the formulation stage, you set what is known as long-term objectives. But when it gets to implementation, you have to break down the long-term objectives into annual objectives. Okay, so if the long-term objectives is, say, 10 years, all right, you can't be working on 10-year objective in the first year. So you need to break it down into annual objectives such that you know what you want to achieve in year 1, you know what you should be doing in year 2, you know what you should be doing in year 3 until the 10th year. Such that as you consistently achieve your annual objectives, that might help you to be able to achieve your long-term objectives at the end of the day. So at the strategy implementation stage, strategy should concentrate on certain annual objectives. Okay, they should look at their long-term objectives at the formulation stage and now reduce that to annual objectives. What the strategists must also be interested in at the implementation stage is developing policies. Okay, so policies are like guidelines to how people should behave in an organization. All right. For those of you working, I'm sure in your organizations, there are various policies. There could be policy with regards to timeliness or punctuality to work. There could be policy with regards to dressing or dress code. There could be policy on operational issues. If you're in the banking sector, there are policies guiding you as to when you can grant a loan, for example, and when you cannot, or the issues that you need to be looking at before a loan application can be approved. Okay, so at the implementation stage, because you don't want people and here the employees to just come to work and probably be misbehaving or not give up their best, you want to have structures, you want to have rules and regulations, you want to have policies in place in order to make sure that everybody is contributing towards the execution of the strategy. Okay, so development of policies is critical at strategy implementation stage. All right. Close to that is motivating employees. This is the stage where, as the name suggests, implementation, where the actual work is supposed to be done. The formulation stage can take place in, say, conferences, some hotels, you'll be drinking coffee and tea and all that. But when it gets to the implementation, that is where the actual work is done. And so you need to find ways to motivate your employees. As much as you have policies as to what they can do, what they cannot do, you must also be thinking about ways to motivate your employees to give up their best. Okay. Then the last issue that you should be interested in at the implementation stage is allocating resources. Okay, so the formulation stage, you may have budgets of how much you want to spend on what activity. When it gets to the implementation, make sure that you actually give the resources, the needed resources, in order to help your employees to be able to execute that particular task. Okay, so what you'll find is that most of the time, companies are very nice strategic plan as to the formulation and the budgeting. But when it comes to actual execution, then the problem starts, because sometimes they don't even have the resources they indicated that they will be allocating for a particular task or project. So when it comes to implementation, then the problems begin because there are no resources. Okay. So at the implementation stage, we should be interested in allocating the necessary resources to help employees to execute any of the tasks that we said they should be doing, they will be doing. So here also, there are some components of strategy implementation that we want to be mindful of. The first one is developing a strategy supportive culture. All right. So no matter how good or excellent your strategy is, if the culture of the organization is not in support of that type of strategy, the strategy is likely to fail. Okay, so for example, you may have a strategy to be customer responsive. What it means is that you want to be able to attend to customers' needs and complaints quickly. You want to be able to be pathetic or sympathetic with customer needs and address them as and when they arise and so on and so forth. Okay. But if the culture in the organization is such that employees don't really care, all right, when people come to the organization, nobody cares to go and request or find out what the challenges of the customer is. They won't smile, they'll frown their faces and so on and so forth. The strategy could be excellent, but because the culture is not in line with that type of strategy, it is not, you are not likely to succeed as far as the execution of the strategy is concerned. So it's very, very important as you formulate right strategies to also develop the right type of culture so that the culture will support the type of strategy that you want to execute. All right. So the reverse could also be true. For example, if you're a loan, how do you call it? Collection or retrieval company. All right. Most of the time, what should be the culture in those type of organizations, especially those that are responsible for collecting loans from customers or clients that have defaulted? Normally, they are consultants. Some other companies, say a bank, may come to them to assist them in collecting loans. So what type of culture should that type of organization have? Especially those that will be responsible for the collection of the loans. I want feedback from you guys. Yes. Hey, are my people online? Or you can't hear me? Let me see. I have the names here.
I can hear you.
Abraham. Abraham, don't mute your mic. Or you wanted to say something. Yes. If you are into debt collection, what kind of culture would your people, those who will be responsible for collecting debt? And when I mean culture, I'm talking about the behavior, like the attitude. What kind of attitude or behavior would you expect such people to have? Oh, Foster. Yes.
I'm thinking about they should be kind of, let's say in a way ruthless.
They should be, we can't hear you. Can you speak up?
said in a way they should be ruthless.
They should be ruthless. Okay.
Yes.
What do you mean by ruthless? What's that?
Let's say they shouldn't have any sympathy. I mean, when the time is due, they should just go straight ahead and let's say demand the money regardless of the situation of the person.
Okay. Grant, what do you think? Grant, there is a name Grant here, please. What do you think?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think they will have there will be some sort of straightness. I mean, and then they will,
I'm listening.
I mean, they should be straight on them.
Okay.
Some kind of
Beautiful. So what's customer responsiveness? You may want a culture that your employees smile, are welcoming, are nice. That is not the same if you went to say debt collection or loan collection and stuff like that. All right. So assuming you have a target to retrieve certain amount of debts in a certain period, and you have all these guys who are supposed to assist you collect the debt, they go to these clients and they are smiling, they are laughing, they come back empty-handed. Okay, that will not help you to be able to achieve the targets that you've set for yourself. So I'm just painting a picture of how important the culture is to be able to achieve the strategy. Okay, so you need a supportive culture, a culture that will be in sync with the type of strategy that you are pursuing or you will be pursuing. All right. So ordinarily, it could be saying, if you want to pursue the strategy of producing high quality products, then you should build that culture. Okay. If you want the strategy of producing your product at lower cost, then you should make your employees to be sensitive to issues such as waste of resources and so on and so forth. So you need the right type of culture in order to be able to execute your strategy successfully. All right. Very similar to that, you have to create an effective organizational structure. Okay, so organizational structure, for those of you with a business background, but if you work in an organization, there are layers, right? If you pick, for example, the organizational charts, it gives you the graphic representation of the organizational structure. But here I'm interested in the levels, all right? So if we go back to our example of trying to be customer responsive, but the structure is a bureaucratic structure, then it becomes difficult to achieve that type of strategy. Because if a customer comes in and makes a complaint, you need about, say, 5 directors or 3 directors to approve before the request can be attended to. If you do that, you cannot achieve that type of strategy that you want to pursue as an organization. Okay, so you need the right type of structure. That doesn't mean bureaucratic structure is bad. Okay, you just have to know your vision, the type of organization, just as we did in the earlier example. For example, if you're dealing with, say, the public sector, because there must be check and balances and issues of corruption are actually very rampant in that sector, it is appropriate to have a bureaucratic system in place so that there will be cross checks here and there to avoid a situation where one officer can just sign off and steal the resources of the government or the state. Okay, so it depends on the type of organization, the industry, the sector, and also the type of strategy you are pursuing. But ultimately, there must be a connection between the organizational structure and the strategy that you want to pursue. All right. If the strategy is to be more customer responsive, for example, you may want to have a flattened organizational structure instead of a tall or whatever. Yes, a tall organizational structure or bureaucratic organizational structure. Okay, so just as we explained with the arguments we made for supportive culture, is the same thing. You need to align your organizational structure with the type of strategy that you want to pursue. All right. Very similarly, you need to redirect your marketing efforts. So your marketing initiatives must support the type of strategy that you are pursuing. So I said earlier on that if you want to pursue the strategy of, say, selling unique, distinct, high-quality products, your marketing efforts should not be talking about lower prices or cheaper prices. Okay, once your strategy is to sell unique and distinct products, that what should be emphasized is quality, the fact that you offer quality products and services. Okay, you cannot be doing that and your marketing, advertisement, and so on and so forth will be talking about lower prices or cheap products and services. No, those two things don't align. All right. If you want to emphasize or market cheap products, then your strategy should be about mass production, not uniqueness of products. All right. But once you're talking about unique and distinct products, then marketing initiatives and efforts should be emphasized on quality. Okay. And I don't know whether you've been paying attention to adverts. All right. There are adverts where the advertisement doesn't even talk about price. All that they do is to give you a picture of, say, if it is a hotel, they show you the facilities, they show you the conference halls, they show you the nature of the rooms, and leave the guests to you, all right? And leave you to contemplate and think about it, that if you were going to such a facility, if you were going to such a facility, the amount of money you should expect to be paying, all right? Yes, and there are also products that the selling point will be the price. Okay, so largely, basically, the point I'm making is that if you are pursuing a particular type of strategy, your advertisement, your promotion, and all your marketing efforts and tools must be directed at that particular type of strategy. Okay. The same logic follows. Your budgeting must be in sync with the type of strategy that you want to pursue. Okay, you shouldn't be allocating more resources to things that are not relevant to the type of strategy that you are pursuing as an organization. Your information systems must be in line with the type of strategy that you want to pursue. And finally, you have to link employee compensation to organizational performance. And here we're talking in the context of the type of targets that you have in your strategy. Okay, so compensation should also be connected to the performance that you want to see as far as the execution of the strategy is concerned. All right, so these are like the background things that must actually be in place to support the effective execution of a strategy. No matter how excellent the strategy is, if some of these things work against the strategy, then it might not be successful, not because the strategy is bad, but because some of the components of strategy implementations were not catered. So it is often called the action stage because, as I indicated, that is where the actual work is done. At the formulation stage, you hold those meetings and conferences and so on and so forth. But at the execution stage, that is where the actual work is done. So it entails mobilizing employees and managers. It calls for a lot of interpersonal skills because you now have to relate with your employees and other stakeholders for them to help you to be able to implement your strategy. So you need a lot of interpersonal skills at this stage. It is also deemed to be the most difficult stage, all right? And I think I've explained this. Whilst the other one is just meetings and talking, at this stage, that is when the actual work is supposed to be done. And that can be much more difficult than the formulation stage. Okay. Strategies that are developed but never implemented serve no purpose. So that also emphasizes the importance of the implementation stage of strategic management. You may have a brilliant strategy, but if you fail to execute it, nobody will actually know and it will not benefit the organization in any way. So that seeks to emphasize the importance of strategy implementation. Okay. Any questions, any contributions before we move to the next stage? Any questions?
Yeah, Prof, no.
Okay. So I guess we can proceed then. So we move to the last stage, which is the strategy evaluation stage. After you've formulated, after you've implemented, the next obvious thing is to go back and do an evaluation of what you've done. Okay, and there are normally three fundamental activities that take place here. Okay, so you have to go back and review your external and internal factors. If you remember when we were discussing strategy formulation, I spoke about the external environment and the internal environment. We said it is the external environment that will help you to know whether you have certain opportunities and whether your organization will be facing certain threats, all right? And then we said the internal environment will help you to know the strengths and weaknesses of your organization. Okay, so the review, and normally your strategies and things that you'll be doing will be based on these two things: the opportunities and threats that you've seen in the external environment, and the strengths and weaknesses that you may have found in your internal environment. What it means is that if you don't go back and review them and see whether those opportunities are still opportunities, or those threats are still threats, or they have shifted from being threats to now opportunities, or they are no more there, the same applies to internal factors. You want to find out whether your strengths have increased, they have decreased, whether your weaknesses have increased or decreased, or they are no longer there, and so on and so forth. If you don't review, you may continue on a path that is not sustainable, okay? The effectiveness of your strategy was based on your understanding of the external and internal environment. And if you proceed without knowing what is happening in your environment, that would be a dangerous move to make as an organization, all right? So major part of your review is to go back to your external environment and then your internal environment to find out whether the things that you thought were opportunities and threats are still the same, and the things that you thought were strengths and weaknesses are still the same. If there is significant variation, what it means is that you may have to think about a way of tweaking your strategy, okay? If they are the same as you started, then probably it may make sense to continue with the same strategy and just make some continuous improvement or adjustment to that strategy as it is, all right? Yes, so key part of the review is to review your external and internal factors or the environment, all right? The next one is the measuring of performance. At the end of the day, it's about the results, all right? So you had some targets that you wanted to achieve. Part of the evaluation is to look at your targets. You could be using ratio analysis or just raw targets. I want to increase my net profit from this to that, maybe by 30%. I want to increase my sales revenue by this. I want to cut down my cost of production by that. You have to go back and find out whether you've been able to meet those numbers, all right? Those issues, the targets really will give you a clue as to whether even what you thought were strengths, your strengths were indeed strengths, and what you thought were opportunities were indeed opportunities. So part of the review is to look at your measuring performance or targets that you had set for yourself, all right? So as I said, if there are major deviations in any of this, whether in the performance targets or KPIs, or there were major changes in your external environment or internal environment, then you should be thinking about taking corrective actions, all right? you can't continue with the same pattern when there have been changes, radical changes in this variables that we just discussed. Okay. And normally I use football as an example. Why, when it comes to, say, the Champions League, it's normally very difficult to have one team to take it several times. Okay. Why? Because when you win it for the first time, the other teams, especially those that were runner-ups and so on and so forth, third and fourth position, for the whole of the season, they will spend time thinking and studying your strategy. Okay. Buying new players, probably changing coaches just because they want to make sure they beat you the next time around. So if you are that club that assumes that things will remain the same, you kept the same players, you kept the same coach, you kept the same tactics, the likelihood of you succeeding in winning the league the next time around is very high, because your external environment might have changed. Okay, the other teams might have bought new players, they might have changed their coach, they might have changed their tactics of play. And don't forget, because you are the winner, all these changes will be targeting the person that won the trophy the previous year. Okay, so if you keep to the same strategy without a review of the environment, whether there have been significant changes, the likelihood of you not succeeding is quite high. Okay. Are we fine with evaluation? Any questions with strategy evaluation? Any questions, any contribution? Okay, so, all right. You are excellent students, so no questions. Let's proceed. So those are the major stages, the three major stages of strategic management, right? Strategy formulation, strategy implementation, and then we have strategy evaluation. All right. So let's look at the components of strategic management. Components of strategic management. As I said, this lecture 1 is an overview of the entire course of strategic management. Okay. So for every organization, you need to have a purpose. And as I indicated much earlier, the purpose consists of the vision statement of the organization, the mission statement, and the value statement. So the purpose is like, why at all do you want to even set up the organization? There must be a need in society. There must be some problem that you think that you can offer a solution to that particular problem. So organizations don't just come because the owners or managers want to make money. Okay, if it is not this small entrepreneurship thing that we do, basically focusing on money. When we take major organizations, most of the time it's because they have identified some major gap or need in society that they feel they can actually work towards changing. Okay, so under the purpose, I've explained these things already. You need to have a vision statement, a mental picture of where you want to go as an organization. You need mission statement. After you have that direction, after getting that direction, you need to know the kind of products and services that you'll be offering in order to address that vision that you said you wanted to achieve. So the mission then comes to help us know what really your business is in terms of the products and services you'll be offering, in terms of the customers you want to serve, the type of market you want to serve, the type of technology you want to use, and so on and so forth. All right. Then you also need value statements. As I indicated, you don't just start business because you want to make money. You started because you have identified certain problems, certain challenges in society that you think you can provide a vehicle, which is your business or company, to help address. So in doing that, you need to be guided by some values, some principles that will help you and your employees or stakeholders to stick to this vision. Okay, so values like honesty, integrity, what again? Confidentiality, all the good things that you can think about. Okay, it shouldn't just be a statement. It should be something you want to incorporate into the culture of the organization, so that anybody working in the organization will know that this organization or company is not just for profit making, but we are really here to serve people and to address the needs of people. Okay, so together, the vision statement, the mission statement, and the value statement will help in addressing what is known as the purpose of an organization. All right, the purpose of an organization. And I said, money is just a byproduct. Most of the time, the purpose should be about addressing certain needs of people or human beings. And then after that has been done, you will be rewarded with money. So you don't start with the sole motive of money. Otherwise, your value statements will not be concrete, right? You cheat people, you sell products that are of poor quality, you do all manner of things because your main motive was to make money. Okay. Then after you've identified your purpose, as a matter of fact, some scholars think that you have to even do this before the purpose, okay? But others also feel this in theory makes sense. In theory, if you do this, then you come to that. But in reality, most of the time, you need to do situational analysis before you can even get your purpose. So situational analysis is what we've discussed earlier. You'd want a proper understanding of your external environment, the environment of the business or industry that you want to get into. How is it like? Okay. Then you want a proper understanding of your internal environment. This, we said, will help you know the opportunities and threats. And we said the internal environment will help you know your strengths and weaknesses. Once you get these two right, then you can now set realistic strategic objectives, because now you know your strengths and weaknesses. You also know the opportunities and threats that will be confronting you as an organization. That then will help you to set more realistic strategic objectives. So these three also makes up what is known as situation analysis. So in strategy, all these things are components or aspects of strategic management. Okay, vision statement. I think this purpose will be doing that in lecture 2. All right. Then lecture 3 will be one of this. 4 will be one of this. Then 5 will be one of this. All right. Then after you've gotten this right, you now, especially after you've set the right strategic objectives, you now have to come and generate the various strategies that will help you to be able to achieve your strategic objectives. All right. So this is where I indicated much earlier in my intro. So we have the business level strategies. In fact, we have functional level strategies. Then we'll move to business level strategies. We have corporate level strategies. Then we have global level strategies for companies that are into international business. Okay. So you need to then set strategies. So functional level strategies are the strategies for the various functional areas of a business. So we have strategies for the marketing department. You could have strategies for finance. You could have strategies for accounting, for what again, for human resource, for production, all of that. Okay. Then we can have business level strategies. So for some companies are in a group. We have group of companies. Example could be, let's say despite group of companies. Okay. What are the various companies or businesses under despite? Yes, please help me out.
I think we have Despite Media.
Despite Media.
Yes.
I don't just want one. I said name them. Despite Media could be one.
That's a Preco company is part of Despite Media.
As a Preco.
Yeah, company.
Okay. Which other company?
Yeah, that's fine. best point savings and loans.
Best point savings and loans.
Yes.
What again? I think we have something need fufu or something like that.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
salt. Okay. And something. So if you so with the business, that's okay. That's fine.
Okay.
All right. So if we're dealing with the business level strategy, that is where you have a strategy for just say despite media or just for best points. All right. So those companies on their own are supposed to have their own strategies as to what they want to do to be able to achieve whatever strategic objectives that they have. Okay. But the corporate level is where the despite group of companies, it must have an overall corporate strategy as to what they want to achieve. Okay. And then from the corporate strategy, they will now determine what Casapreco should be doing, what best points, whatever should be doing, what need fufu, and whatever should be doing, and so on and so forth. So the separate companies will have what is known as business level strategy. And then the group will have what is known as the corporate level strategy. All right. And then I said, if the company is in international business, then they will have what is known as the global level strategy. Okay. What they should be doing in, say, European markets, what they should be doing in, say, African markets, and so on and so forth. That is what is known as the global level strategy. All right. So after you've known this, you now have to come and set or generate the various strategies at these various levels. Then the natural one will be the implementation, which we just spoke about not long ago. Okay. So at the implementation, we have strategy implementation. You must have strategic control. As you implement, there should be checks and balances. And then just like the evaluation thing, then finally they should have strategic leadership. If you don't have strong leadership to push all of these other components, the strategy could be good. Okay. You might even have the resources, but because you don't have the right type of leadership, you may fail in the execution of your strategy. Okay. So yes, so unfortunately, because we just have 5 days, where we might end will be probably strategic objectives here. All right. But I've given you slides on strategic leadership as well, because the name of this thing includes strategic leadership. And so you have to read this. But a comprehensive understanding of strategic management should include all these things that we've listed here. You need to know about vision statement. You need to know about mission statement, values, value statements, the external environment, the internal environment, strategic objectives, business level strategy, corporate level strategy, global strategy, strategy implementation, strategic control, and then strategic leadership. All right. Okay, any questions, any suggestions, any contribution? Are we fine?
Okay, we are fine.
Okay. So let's move to another concept. So after here is basically an explanation of some terms that you may find as you meet strategic management people, strategies, some of the concepts that they will use and what they mean, and the importance of that to the various things that we've discussed or the components that we've seen so far. Okay, so we have what is known as strategic planning. All right, strategic planning. We've seen strategic management, but it is not the same as strategic planning. So strategic planning is the advanced sequencing of strategic management decisions by an executive or senior management. So the things that we've spoken about, you need to sequence them. At what point should we be doing formulation? At what point should we be doing implementation? At what point should we be doing evaluation or control? All right. So the advanced sequencing of strategic management decisions by an executive or senior management is what is known as strategic planning. So it is a formal analytic process that provides an organization with a sequential framework or organizational design to move towards a long-term purpose. So you get to know exactly when we should be doing what. All right. So a strategic plan should have a defined strategy. So in the plan, we'll have the strategy. It should have action plans derived from this strategy. So from your strategy also, you need to have action plans. Okay, what exactly you should be doing in order to achieve your strategy. Those are the action plans. It should have an awareness and recognition of the differences between short and long-term plans. All right. Much earlier, I told you that whenever we mention the word strategy, it connotes long-term. Okay, but as a good strategist, you don't just look long-term, you also must be mindful of what is happening in the short term. That is why when you have long-term objectives in the formulation stage, when you now get to the implementation stage, you rather have to set what is known as annual objectives. Okay, so a strategic plan must have put in perspective both short and long-term plans. And the whole idea, beauty is that as you continually achieve your short-term plans, at the end of the day, you'll be able to achieve the long-term plans as well. Okay. A strategic plan should have an approach for developing strategy based on an organization's external environment and internal strategic resources. I think we've explained this already. An approach for implementing action plans that considers an organization's key processes and performance measures. Okay. An approach for monitoring and evaluating our organizational performance in relation to the strategic plan. So if you've paid attention, these are all the stuff that we said you will be doing in strategic management. Okay, but you need a plan, and the plan will provide what is known as the approach for dealing with the issues that you should be looking at under strategic management. Okay, so the plan will lay out the approach and sequence out what should be done at any point in time. And that is the idea of strategic planning. Okay. Strategic planning, why some firms do not undertake strategic planning. So in spite of, we'll be looking at the benefits of strategic management or planning later on. But in spite of the benefits, some firms do not undertake strategic planning. And these are some of the reasons. Sometimes they don't have formal training in strategic management, all right? Once you don't know about strategic management, you cannot even undertake strategic planning. No understanding of or appreciation for the benefits of planning, all right? So some don't see the need to plan. Why waste time thinking about 5 years' time whilst there are customers to serve today? Okay, so some don't see the need. No monetary rewards for doing the planning. So some feel there is no any gain in doing the planning. Nobody will pay you. Instead of spending time planning, why not spend time looking for more customers or more products to sell? Okay. Then there is no punishment for planning. All right. No, there is no regulatory requirement for any organization to have a strategic plan. It might be that investors who know about strategy and how business should be run may not want to invest with you, but there is no any tangible punishment for not planning. Some firms view the planning as a waste of time since no product or service is made. All right, during the planning stage, no tangible product or service is made. And so some see it as a waste of time. Some are too busy firefighting to plan ahead. So firefighting in this context means that they are too busy solving the problem of today. Okay, you remember I used the word operational issues, operational plans. So there are problems that they are solving today. So they don't have any time to be thinking about 5 years or 10 years ahead of today. Okay, so they are too busy firefighting and they don't have time to plan ahead. All right. So it is not as if once you engage in strategic planning, everything is rosy. There are also pitfalls in strategic planning. All right. There are challenges in strategic planning. So using strategic planning to gain control over decisions and resources. So some strategies or managers actually use the planning process or stage in order to divert resources and actually seek to control, have power in the organization. Okay, so they are not really engaged in strategic planning because they feel the organization needs it, but they want to suggest changes and make moves that will, at the end of the day, make them more powerful. All right. So they may structure it. If they are in the, say, finance department, they may structure the whole process in such a way that nobody can do anything until approval is given by finance. All right. On the surface, it may look as if they are interested in the organization, but in reality, they may actually be interested in getting more power, okay, by the way that they structure the activities in the organization. So that is the point. Doing strategic planning only to satisfy accreditation requirements. So that is another problem. So some firms undertake it, but they just do it because probably the accreditation authorities may want to see their strategic plans before they may give the accreditation to do whatever they want to do. All right. So they just do it. And if you go to most organizations, you will see those things on the board, right? You see vision statement, you see mission statement, you may see value statement. But if you were even to ask the CEO or the owner, he will not be able to even quote the vision of the organization for you. They just have it there because it's like a requirement for that particular type of industry in which they are in. Okay. Top management not actively supporting the strategic planning process. So that can also be a problem, because at the end of the day, it calls for commitment of resources. And once top management doesn't support the process, what it means is that they may not also provide the resources needed when it gets to execution. So if you don't have top management supporting the planning, strategic planning process, it can hinder the process. Then failing to communicate the plan to employees who continue working in the dark. All right, that can be a major problem. I think yesterday also I was watching a video either on Facebook or YouTube where one CEO, I think he owns a company, was talking about how he lost so many employees, and the reason was that the employees felt they didn't know the direction of the company, and he admitted that he did not actually communicate the vision, the mission, and those things that we spoke about, the purpose of the organization. He failed to communicate that to his employees. Okay, so he says in just 1 year, he lost about 11 employees. These were like the top guys that were supposed to support him. All right. And when the 12th person wanted to leave, it was then that he wanted to know why they were leaving. And it was that person that opened up and said they felt they don't know the direction of the organization. They don't know where the organization is headed. So it is very, very critical to communicate the strategic plan of the organization and get everybody involved. All right. One way to motivate employees, as we might be seeing later on, it's not just about salary, but to make them feel that they are contributing to something meaningful in society. And the way to do that is to let them know the strategic vision or plan of the organization. Top managers making many intuitive decisions that conflict with the formal plan. All right, so it's similar to point 2, where some organizations have it just to meet accreditation. So what is the point in having the strategic plan, and yet top management will make decisions that are opposite what the plan is saying? All right, once you do that, you demotivate the rest of the employees in the organization. What it means is that you don't believe in the plan in the first place, and that can be a challenge in strategic planning. Then being so formal in planning that flexibility and creativity are stifled. So if you are too formal and you won't allow your subordinates or employees to make suggestions and inputs that can derail the strategic planning process. Okay, it's the stage where you should allow for criticisms. You should allow people to be able to challenge the status quo. But if you insist that you have the right ideas and so on and so forth, then it can create a big problem for the process, the strategy planning process. Okay. Any questions, any suggestions before we proceed? Are we following?
Yes, Prof. We are following.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, we are following.
Okay, that's fine. So let's move to. So there is this other concept known as strategic change. Okay, strategic change, that we have to know what it means. So strategic change is a type of transformational change that aims to move an organization to higher level of performance. It works by concentrating an organization's energy and resources on a few critical success factors or strategic priorities in order to achieve a new desired state and market position. Okay, so I'm sure probably you've heard it before. So strategic change is like transformational change. It's not like we want to just tweak something small. No, we want to pay attention to where, if the organization concentrates on, we can see clear changes or improvement in the organization. Okay, so strategic change will focus on what is known as the critical success factors of an organization. So in every industry, we have what is known as the critical success factors, what you need in order to succeed in that particular industry. Okay, for example, if you take telecommunication industry, let me leave it to you. What are the factors you take into consideration in deciding the type of mobile network to join? So if you were torn between, say, Vodafone, MTN, do we still have Glo? Let's assume we have it, right? Let's assume we have Glo.
Yeah.
And then we have Airtel, what do you call it? Tigo, Airtel, right? Or Airtel Tigo?
We call it AT.
Airtel to go.
Airtel Tigo.
Airtel to go.
Yes. So what are the variables you take into consideration and deciding which of this network to join?
Network stability.
What do you mean by network stability? Please, if you want to answer, use the reaction button, right? So that we can have an orderly discussion. But you can continue. What do you mean by network stability?
Maybe talking about access to the network anytime you need it, and as whether it is functional.
Okay, so maybe the quality of the network connectivity. Yes.
Network
Any
quality,
other?
yes.
Network quality. Any other point? Guys, don't you have mobile phones? We all have mobile phones. Monica. Monica, do you have a mobile phone?
Hello, sir.
Yes. Do you have a mobile phone?
Yes, sir.
I won't ask you which network, but what factors did you take into consideration and deciding the type of network that you are on now?
I consider the number of people using that network.
The number of people using that
network, yes.
Yeah.
And I also considered at that time the data, the amount of data I could use in a month and the price in relation to the data.
So you considered price. Monica,
yes.
You are talking too much. So you considered price. Don't worry.
Yes, sir.
Then the number of people using it. What technical term can we use for that? Within that industry, how will they call it?
They are clientele.
Clientele, yes. But I want some word that is not coming. Anybody who is thinking what I'm thinking? Samuel Asma.
Demand.
Oh, you are shifting away from the answer I want to. Have you heard about network coverage? The coverage.
Yes.
All right. So the coverage is like the area, how wide that is, and that has some correlation with the number of people that can use it. All right. Yes. So let's limit ourselves to say network quality, price. It could be price of data. It could be price of just the credit that you need to make your calls. Then network coverage. All right. The extent of the coverage that will determine the number of people. Okay. If you have a network that is only in, say, Accra, what it means is that it is only the people in Accra that can use it. If you have a network that you can get calls and whatever at Bolgatanga, all things being equal, you have more people that will join that particular network. Okay. Then the price as well. All right. So these three things are what we can refer to as critical success factors as far as the telecommunication industry is concerned. Okay. So in that industry, if you want to bring about strategic change, all right, visible change that will bring about an improvement in the organization, these are the things that you have to concentrate on. Okay. And if you have paid attention, those that now have strong market share in Ghana are companies that have paid attention to these things. Okay. Except that in the case of price, because one of these companies have invested a lot in the other variables, they are not able to charge lower prices compared to the others. Okay. And if you go for lower prices in the others also, you see that because of their failure to invest in the others, in fact, you may buy the data or whatever at a cheap price, but you cannot use it because wherever you go, the connectivity is bad and so on and so forth. All right. So the point I want to make is that if we pick the telecommunication industry, we'll get to know what is known as the critical success factors. If you get these three things right, all things being equal, you are likely to have a competitive advantage in that type of industry. Okay. You guys, I'm sure some of you are into the oil and gas industry. When we talk about, is it OMCs, like the Gold, the Total, all these guys that sell? What do you think are the critical success factors in that industry? I'm dealing with petroleum and energy people, so we should be using those examples. Yes.
I think the quality of the oil or something.
Who is speaking? We can't hear you. Can you speak a bit louder?
This is what I was saying. I think it's the quality of the oil.
So the quality of the oil. In fact, I didn't know the oils have grades until I started teaching on this program. Okay, then they started mentioning different types of oil. I say, hey, some of us will only look at the price. Once the price is cheap by a peso, you want to drive there to go and buy. All right. But yes, so if you have educated clientele or customers, they will pay attention to the quality of the oil. Any other? What do you think will be critical success factors for that industry? Guys, do you use cars at all? Joseph, do you have a car? Hey, Kelvin. So the quality of the oil, any other point? Any other points?
I think we can talk about the price.
Okay, we can talk about price as well. Yeah.
And then, yes, I think we can also talk about proximity to customers. As in, most of these need a lot of places where a lot of population and people have cars.
That's the main issue. So I was thinking about location. right?
The location, yeah.
It's almost like any real estate business. It's the location that is very, very critical. Okay, those that have found themselves in very strategic positions on the highway are likely to make a lot of money than those that are located in very obscure places. All right. So you see that for this industry, we can get three: quality of oil, the price, the location. Okay. So if you want to engage in strategic change, it is not with strategic change, we are not talking about minor changes, right? We are talking about changes in these areas that we can consider to be critical to the success of firms in this particular industry. Okay, so once you target them and you cause those major changes, you can see a reflection in the performance of the organization. Well, very soon, I think the next slide will look at the various types of strategic change. Okay, so the direction of the change is guided by the strategy aimed at achieving a vision of a future state. When conditions are stable, strategic change is implemented through continuous improvement. So if whatever you are doing and the environment is stable, you're making money, you don't want to radically change things, okay? You don't want to radically shift whatever you are doing. So you use the concept known as continuous improvement. You simply make whatever you are currently doing better than before, okay? We'll be looking at that as well. But when the environment is not stable, you are probably not making profit and so on and so forth, then you want to make radical strategic changes. Okay, right. So types of strategic change. So these are the three major ways you can change strategically. So you can do restructuring. Organizations may need to reorganize aspects of their business in order to remain competitive. All right. You may have some branch that is not performing well. I spoke about it earlier on. You may have some division that is not doing well. You want to lay it off. Or internally, you just fill the layers in terms of the organizational structure. In terms of the organizational structure, it's just too long, right? So you want to flatten that. All of those changes can be done, and they are part of what is known as a strategic change. Okay, we have probably 10 branches. You felt that is just too many. You cannot handle that successfully, so you want to reduce it to 5 and so on. You have 5 layers. That is just too much. You want to reduce it to 3 and so on and so forth. So that is restructuring. Then we can have re-engineering. Re-engineering focuses on redesigning the business processes and related systems in order to improve performance. So with re-engineering, you want to work on your processes. Okay, if you are into manufacturing, the processes, maybe initially you needed to use about 5 steps before you can get some finished product. All right, with restructuring, you may re-engineering, you may want to reduce the steps to now to 3, all right? By 3, maybe you might have reduced some cost involved in the 4th and 5th stage, and so on and so forth. So re-engineering basically is to look at your processes and related system to see areas where you can cut cost and waste and so on and so forth, all right? Then we have innovation. Innovation is the use of skills and resources to create new ideas or improve existing ones. So you can also innovate by coming up with new ideas or improving upon existing ideas. So strategic change can take any of these forms: restructuring, re-engineering, innovation. Okay. So steps of strategic change, let's just read through them quickly. Determine the need for change. Is there any need for the change at all? Perform stakeholder analysis to get their perspectives. Build support for change. Okay, people do not normally like change, and so you need to build support. And to do that, create what is known as the change network. Okay, so you need some people that will sponsor the change, maybe provide a fund needed for that change. You need advocates that will speak for the change, and you need a change agent, those that will take the lead, okay, and implementing or executing the change. Then prepare a change management plan when what should be done, identify and manage obstacles, and then finally evaluate the change that you just brought about. Okay. We also have the concept of continuous improvement. All right. We just saw it not long ago. So in strategic management, even when you've met your targets and the environment is stable, you still have to find a way to better whatever you've done in the past. Okay. So you always have to be thinking about what else can I do to improve either the quality of my product or minimize the cost of production, whatever the indicator might be. You always have to be thinking about how to make it better. So that is what is known as continuous improvement. Sorry, it is not continuous change, right? It's continuous improvement. So it's incremental and focused on making improvement. It is usually motivated by a desire to maintain and improve productivity and customer value in day-to-day management. The principle is to stick to a consistent business model of an organization's core value creating areas. Okay, so you have your key performance indicators. It could be profit, it could be sales, it could be reducing cost of production. Whatever it is, you must continually be thinking about how to improve that. Okay, so if you increase your profit by, say, 10% this year, you don't get excited and remain there. You must find ways by which you can increase it to 20%, to 30%, and so on and so forth. That is the idea of continuous improvement. All right. What are the benefits of continuous improvement? It leads to more engaged employees because you always have higher standards that they have to achieve. And the higher standards will call for their commitment, and that will make them more engaged. Okay, it could lead to lower employee turnover. The more employees are engaged and feel that they are doing something meaningful to society, the lesser the likelihood that they will leave the organization. It could lead to more competitive products and services because, as the name goes, you're always seeking for ways to improve the quality of these products and services, and that can make them competitive. It could lead to better customer service, just the same argument or similar argument, because you always want to improve upon your customer service. It can lead to a better customer service. Then finally, it could have a proactive learning culture in your organization because you're always thinking about ways to improve upon the previous performance. Okay. Yes, Foster. You said?
How about increase in profit?
What about decrease in profit?
Increase in profit.
What about that?
Being some of the benefits of the continuous improvement.
Oh yeah. We don't want to pick them like one by one. Otherwise, it could lead to improvement of any of the other things, right? But you realize that these ones are the leading indicators of firm performance. Once you have these benefits, the other quantitative things can be taken for granted. Okay. Once you have more engaged employees, you have lower employee turnover, you have competitive products and services, better customer service. Obviously, sales will go up, profit will go up, cost of production might go up. So the quantitative things will get better once you have these things right. So that is why probably you won't see profit, you won't see sales and things like that. Okay. Good. So we move to this other term, competitive strategy. Okay, competitive strategy. So we know what strategic management is. We know what strategic planning is. We've just learned about continuous improvement. We are now looking at competitive strategy. So competitive strategy provides an organization with an advantage in earning above average profit within its industry by creating value that is distinct from that offered by competitors. Okay, so if you perceiving a competitive strategy, you want to earn above average profits, all right, by creating value that can be considered to be distinct from your competitors. So in competitive strategy, the keyword is competitive. You want to stand out. And the way to stand out is to provide value that is different from what your competitors are offering. Okay. A sustainable competitive advantage is not simply doing similar activities better than competitors. It is doing those activities in a way that rivals find difficult to replicate at equivalent cost. What it means is that if you want to have a sustained competitive advantage, it is not just doing things as your rivals are doing them or competitors are doing them, okay? But you should be able to do things in a better way, such that your rivals will not be able to match up with that standard. If they want to do that, because of the cost that is associated, they may have to spend more money to be able to get to that level, okay? So if they spend more money to get to where you are, then it also gives you an advantage, because if you even sell at the same price as they sell, you will be able to make more profit because you didn't waste much money as they did to be able to get to your level, okay? Otherwise, just position yourself at a point where, just position yourself at a point where your rivals will not be able to match up with you in terms of the quality and the uniqueness of the products that you offer or the value that you offer to customers. All right. Then strategy. So the earlier one was competitive strategy. And we said once competitive is there, we are talking about how to make your products and services unique or distinct in such a way that you earn above average profit, because your competitors cannot match up to that, okay? But when we use the word strategy generally, it's a method of directing an organization's operations to ensure that its direction and purpose are maintained over time. Okay, so strategy just provides direction for an organization's operations so that we don't just do anything without reference to the purpose of the organization. And by now, I'm sure we are clear with the purpose. The purpose consists of the vision of the organization, the mission of the organization, and the values of the organization. So strategy will always make sure that the operations and things within the organization are made in conformity with the purpose of the organization. It serves as a reference framework for all organizational decision-making by clarifying an organization's overall priorities and identifying the main options in line with its purpose, okay? So 2 perspectives of strategy: external market positioning and internal strategic resources. We've discussed this. So anytime you're doing strategy, you want to be mindful of how the external environment is faring and how you can position yourself in that particular environment, and how you can also take advantage of your internal strategic resources in order to take advantages of the opportunities that you may find in the external environment. Okay. Levels of strategy. I think I've touched on this already, if you remember when we're dealing with that. So we have corporate strategy. Describes company's overall direction in terms of its general attitude towards growth and the management of its various businesses and product lines. All right. And I explained to you that the way to understand corporate level strategy is to view the company as a group of companies or businesses. Okay. So even though they are distinct businesses, the entire group must have an overall direction. They should have where they are heading towards. And I use the SPY group of companies to help you understand that. Okay. Then we now have business strategy. Usually occurs at business unit or product level, and it emphasizes improvement of the competitive position of corporations' products or services in the specific industry or market segment served by that business unit. Okay, so if we pick Despite Media or group of companies once again, Despite Media will be serving in a different industry. Best Point Savings and Loan, different industry. Need Fufu, different industry. So they must also have a strategy for this specific business units in order for them to be successful. All right. Then we have the functional strategy. Is the approach taken by the functional area, such as marketing or R&D, to achieve corporate and business unit objectives and strategies by maximizing resource productivity. So functional strategies are basically the strategies that are taken by the various functional areas of a business. All right. Let's look at the attributes of strategic decisions. I've given you one already long ago. I told you that once you hear strategic, it means long-term, right? If you remember, futuristic. So let's look at others as well. So strategic decisions are founded on systematic, comprehensive examination of the entire organization. Decisions that affect only a subset of the organization, such as a single functional area, are not usually considered strategic. So if you remember my explanation of the definition of strategic management, when I was explaining the phrase cross-functional decisions, this was what I was trying to talk about, right? So with strategic decisions, you need the entire organization. You need all the functional areas working together to deal with those decisions. Once it's a functional decision, that cannot be a strategic issue. Okay. The next, they are long-term and forward-thinking, but they are founded on knowledge of the past and present. Okay, so long-term orientation, forward-thinking, but you have to rely on data or information about the past and the present. They seek to take advantage of opportunities and minimize threats. So that is also the attribute of strategic decisions. You take those decisions in order to take advantage of opportunities and also minimize threats. The next thing is that they involve choices. That is, there is always some level of trade-off between alternatives, okay? So in strategic decisions, you may be torn between alternative 1 or 2, and you have to decide which one you want to pursue, all right? Let's look at some theoretical underpinnings of strategic management. Okay, so in strategy, we said 2 things always will be coming up. The fact that you need to understand your external environment or the industry within which you are operating, and also the fact that you need to know about your internal environment. We said the external environment is where you get opportunities and where your company is likely to face threats. Your internal environment are where your strengths are likely to emanate from, and also where weaknesses are likely to come from. Okay, so some scholars hold the view that for an organization to be able to thrive and perform well, they need to be mindful of the industry or the environment, external environment within which they are operating. And that theory that supports that is what is known as the industrial organization theory, IO theory. Okay, so the assumption is that if an organization is to survive and grow, that company must adapt to industry impacts. So whatever is happening within the industry that the organization is operating is very critical for the success of that particular organization. Okay, so the success of the industry in which it competes has a significant impact on the firm's financial performance. And otherwise, this theory is laying more emphasis on the significance of the external environment or the industry within which a firm is operating. All right. So if you're a good manager and you want to do well, then pay attention to the industry variables or the external environment variables. The opposite is this other theory, resource-based theory. Okay, so organizational performance is primarily determined by a firm's ability to utilize its resources. So this theory seeks to negate or minimize the impact of the external environment and argues that it is all about how a manager effectively utilizes the resources within the organization. That will determine whether the organization will become successful or not. Okay. And the theory sees the resources to include both tangible and intangible resources, such as capital, personnel, knowledge, and information. Okay. The theory argues also that it is not any type of resource that can offer a company a competitive advantage. And the resources that can offer competitive advantage are resources that are valuable, they are rare, they are difficult to duplicate perfectly, and without strategically relevant substitutes. So for a resource to be able to give you an advantage, it must be valuable. That's point one. It must be rare. In fact, the others are similar to the rare. The point is that if your rivals can always get that type of resource, whether in a way of a substitute or can duplicate it or can easily get it somewhere, then it cannot give you any competitive advantage, okay? The competitive advantage comes when you have something that your rivals don't have. And so if you have a resource and they can also easily get access to that type of resource, then you cannot get any meaningful competitive advantage from that. Yes, but the main thrust of this theory is that if you're a strategist and you want your company or business to perform well, then pay attention to the internal environment of the organization. Okay, once you make good use of your internal resources, your organization will perform well. All right. So some scholars supported the industry or the external environment, as we've seen the IO theory, and some supported the internal environment, as we've seen the resource-based theory. Okay, so the final theory that underpins strategic management is what is known as contingency theory. Okay, so contingency basically means it depends. All right, so it argues that managers and businesses that will be successful must pay attention to both environments. Okay, so it contends that the most successful businesses create advantageous matches with their environment. It sees organizational performance as the result of both external forces and internal corporate strategic decisions. So whilst the earlier theories were arguing either for the external or the internal, the contingency theory admonishes managers and strategists to pay attention to both the internal and external environment. And I think this makes sense because once you have some scholars saying the external environment is important and others saying internal environment is important, you have to take a pragmatic view where you pay attention to both environments if you want to be successful as an organization. All right. So what we just discussed is what we have here in the form of a diagram. Okay. So we have the industrial organization or IO theory. The primary influence on the firm is the structure of the industry. So it is not about the company really. It's about the industry within which you are operating. Okay. So if the industry is doing well, the company will do well. If the industry or the external environment is not doing well, that will affect the performance of the company. Industry analysis portion of the external environment. Yes, so I've explained that the industry is just part of the external environment. All right. Resource-based view, firm's unique combination of strategic resources. So it is about the resources within the organization. So it argues that forget about whatever is happening in the industrial external environment, make good use of your resources. And if you were to do that, you'll be successful. Okay. It emphasizes an analysis of internal strengths and weaknesses. If you come to the contingency theory, it seeks for a fit between the firm's between firm and its external environment. So it's not just the external or just the internal, but a combination of both the internal and the external environment that will cause a firm to succeed. And so to be able to determine how an organization will succeed. It will rely on what is known as the SWOT analysis, okay? So it is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So it's a combination of both the internal environment and the external environment analysis. You have to be matching your strength against opportunities, or your strength against threats, your weaknesses against opportunities. We have all kinds of quadrants in here to help you to be able to make decisions. Okay, so you don't make decisions just based on the industry, and you don't make decisions just based on your internal environment, but you combine both the internal and external environment to be able to make business decisions. Okay, let's run through the benefits of strategic management. Then we'll be out of here. So organizations that employ strategic management tend to experience greater success and profitability. All right, and it comes from all the discussions that we've said so far. You don't do things out of chance. You think through things and put in place mechanisms before they occur. So they stand a better chance at being successful and being profitable. They exhibit notable improvements in sales, profitability, and productivity. Okay, I think we're talking about something, or is it continuous improvement? Yes. And somebody wanted to know about this. Yes, so if we just even pick continuous improvement and its benefits, it can lead to all of these things, as I explained much earlier. Okay, it's companies that engage in strategic management also tend to make better informed choices, okay, that are well aware of both short and long-term effects. So we said strategic management is about long-term, but not just long-term. You also take into consideration what has happened in the past and what is happening in the present, okay? Then high-performing business. Here we're talking about businesses that engage in strategic management. They prepare for future changes in their internal and external surroundings. So if you are engaged in strategic management, things don't just take you by surprise, all right? You always will be thinking about what is happening in your internal as well as your external environment. So these are some of the financial benefits, but they are almost the same as the non-financial. Point 1 says it leads to higher awareness of external threats. Because you've paid attention to your external environment, you will get to know if there are any threats about to happen or befall your organization. Okay, it will lead to better comprehension of rivals' strategies. Once again, because you keep on studying your external environment and your rivals are part of that environment, you'll get to know the strategies of your competitors or rivals, okay? It could lead to increased employee productivity. It could lead to decreased resistance to change. Somewhere we spoke about communication, getting managers involved and all employees involved. I think that was where I was talking about the video that I watched, that some CEO failed to communicate the vision and so on and so forth. Once you communicate, it leads to resistance to change. Okay, it will clarify knowledge on performance reward linkages. You clearly know the type of performance that will be rewarded by the organization. I said that is important because you don't want to be encouraging performance that is not connected to the strategic objectives. So employees will get to know which performance will get rewarded in the organization. Okay, then finally, it will lead to improved ability to prevent problems. Why? Because it's futuristic. You don't wait for problems and issues to come before you start addressing them. All right, so if you engage in strategic management, it will improve your ability to prevent problems. Okay. Any questions? Any contributions? I think we've come to the end of the lecture for this one. If there are any questions, I would like to pick them up.